AITA for refusing to lend my friend money to buy a car. Even though she says I'm being unsupportive, I, 34F, have a close friend, Rachel, 33F, who I've known since college. She's intelligent, creative, and has a great sense of humor, but she has a history of making impulsive financial decisions. Over the years, she's accumulated credit card debt and has occasionally asked for loans to cover things she couldn't afford. I've lent her smaller amounts in the past, but I've always had to remind her to repay, and sometimes it took months. Recently, Rachel called me saying that her car broke down and that she needed a new one immediately. She said she couldn't get to work without a car and that her current savings wouldn't cover the cost of a reliable vehicle. She asked if I could loan her $6,000 so she could buy a car. I was shocked because this is a substantial amount, and lending it would put me in a tight financial situation. I have a mortgage, student loans, and savings goals, and $6,000 isn't something I can part with without risking my own financial security. I told Rachel that I couldn't lend her that amount. I explained that I was willing to help in other ways. I could help her research affordable, reliable cars, assist with negotiating a better price, or look for financing options that wouldn't require me to lend her money. I also suggested she could consider a short-term loan from her credit union, which would allow her to maintain independence while still getting a car quickly. Rachel didn't take this well. She accused me of being selfish and unsupportive, claiming that I was refusing to help a friend in need and that our friendship meant nothing if I couldn't make this sacrifice. She said I had the means to help and that I was prioritizing money over our relationship. I tried to explain that refusing the loan didn't mean I didn't care. It was about protecting both of us from potential problems. I reminded her that if I lent her the money, there was a high chance of delayed repayment or other issues, given her track record. The conversation escalated. Rachel said I was holding her back and that other friends in similar situations would help without hesitation. She implied that I was judging her financial habits instead of supporting her. I responded that supporting her didn't mean taking on financial risk that I couldn't afford, and that I could still help her in practical, constructive ways that didn't involve money. Some mutual friends have weighed in. A few say I should just lend it and forget it because friendship comes first, while others agree that setting boundaries around money is reasonable and that my refusal is justified. I feel frustrated because Rachel refuses to see the difference between emotional support, practical advice, and financial assistance. I considered compromise. For example, I could have lent a smaller amount, say $1,000 to $2,000, or co-sign a loan to help her secure financing. However, I worry that even a smaller amount could create tension, given her history with repayment, and co-signing could impact my credit if she falls behind. I also considered helping her with rides temporarily or assisting with public transit, but she dismissed these solutions as insufficient. Since refusing, Rachel has been distant and occasionally passive-aggressive. She posts on social media about friends who don't have your back and makes indirect comments about money and loyalty. I still maintain contact with her and offer guidance and emotional support, but she seems to equate any refusal to provide financial help with a lack of care or friendship. I feel torn. I want to help her, but I also need to protect my financial stability and set boundaries. My refusal has caused tension in our friendship, but I believe that enabling repeated financial dependence would ultimately harm her and strain our relationship further. I feel like I've done everything I reasonably can to support her without taking on undue risk. So, AITA for refusing to lend my friend $6,000 to buy a car. Even though she says I'm being unsupportive and others suggest I should prioritize friendship over money, I feel like I'm trying to help her in meaningful ways that don't compromise my own security, but she interprets any limits as a personal rejection. This has created ongoing tension. I want to maintain our friendship and continue supporting her emotionally and practically, but I cannot provide financial assistance without risking my own stability. I'm unsure if my boundaries make me unreasonable in her eyes, or if standing firm is the right decision for both of us. I hope there's a way to preserve the friendship while ensuring I don't enable harmful financial habits. But at the moment, it feels like any alternative support is seen as insufficient or uncaring. I'm committed to helping her navigate this situation responsibly, but I cannot sacrifice my own well-being to do so. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my friend move in after she got evicted, even though she promised it would be temporary. I, 33F, have been living in my apartment for about 5 years. It's a one-bedroom place that I've worked hard to make comfortable and organized. I work from home several days a week, so my apartment doubles as both a living space and my workspace. I value routine, predictability, and quiet, and I've always prioritized keeping my home as a safe and stable environment for myself. My friend, Rachel, 32F, has been part of my life since college. We became close quickly and have shared a lot over the years, from personal struggles to career milestones. Over the past decade, Rachel has had difficulty maintaining stability in her life. She's had short-term jobs, frequently moved apartments, and sometimes made impulsive financial decisions that resulted in debts or late rent payments. I've always supported her emotionally and occasionally helped with temporary arrangements when I could, but I've never let her live with me for extended periods because I know how disruptive it could be. A week ago, Rachel called me in tears. She had just been evicted from her apartment because she fell behind on rent and said she had nowhere to go. She asked if she could move in with me temporarily until she found a new place. She emphasized that it would only be for a few weeks and promised she would respect my home, my rules, and my routines. I felt torn because I cared deeply about her, but I also remembered past instances where she overstayed temporary arrangements, which led to tension and stress. I told her I couldn't let her live with me. I explained that my apartment is small, my work requires a quiet and stable environment, and having someone live with me, even temporarily, could disrupt both my work and mental health. I offered alternatives, helping her find a short-term rental or Airbnb, contacting mutual friends who might host her for a night or two, or assisting her in searching for a new apartment. I try to make it clear that my refusal was about maintaining boundaries, not about rejecting her as a person. Rachel didn't take it well. She accused me of being selfish, saying I was putting my comfort above our friendship. She said that family and friends should be there for each other in times of crisis, and implied that I was abandoning her. I tried to explain that I wanted to help her in other ways and that letting her live with me could create tension or problems that neither of us wanted. She argued that a short-term stay would not be disruptive and that I was overreacting. After that, Rachel started calling and texting me constantly, often late at night. She described her situation in detail, sometimes in messages that seemed designed to guilt me into changing my mind. I tried to respond politely, reiterating that I could help her find temporary housing or resources, but it didn't seem to satisfy her. I began feeling anxious and stressed whenever my phone rang, which affected my focus at work and my own peace of mind. I considered compromise, like letting her stay for a single night or allowing her to store some belongings temporarily while she looked for a new place, but I realized even short-term arrangements could quickly turn into extended living. I also worried about the emotional consequences. Rachel can be highly emotional when stressed, and having her in my apartment could lead to arguments or resentment. I wanted to avoid damaging our friendship permanently. Some friends have told me I'm justified, saying it's reasonable to set boundaries to protect my own life and mental health. Others have said I should make an exception since she's in a crisis and I care about her. The conflicting advice has made me feel even more guilty. I want to be there for Rachel, but I also don't want to compromise my stability or create stress in my own life. Rachel has started telling other mutual friends that I refuse to help her, which makes me feel guilty, even though I've been helping her in ways that don't involve having her live with me. I've assisted her in researching temporary rentals, offered to pay for a few nights at an Airbnb, and helped her look for new apartments. None of these alternatives seem enough to her, and she keeps pressing me to change my mind. So, AITA for refusing to let my friend move in after she got evicted? I want to help her without sacrificing my own home, mental health, and stability. I've offered compromises, alternative solutions, and support, but she interprets my refusal as cold or uncaring. I feel trapped between wanting to help her and needing to protect myself, and every day I feel stressed, anxious, and guilty. I worry that standing firm on my boundaries might damage our friendship permanently, even though I believe I'm acting responsibly and reasonably. I want to be compassionate and supportive without compromising my life. I've tried to make it clear that my refusal is about boundaries and not about rejecting her, but she continues to insist I'm being selfish. I feel like no matter what I do, I will either be letting her down or compromising my own well-being, and I don't know which makes me the asshole. I want to support her recovery from this crisis without turning my home into a source of stress and conflict, but it feels impossible to strike the right balance. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because of her fiancé. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my younger sister, Emily, 28F. Growing up, we were close in some ways, but our personalities clashed a lot. I'm more introverted, cautious, and analytical, while she's spontaneous, confident, and, well, dramatic. Over the years, we've had periods where we were inseparable and periods where we barely spoke, mostly because she tends to make impulsive decisions that affect everyone around her. About a year ago, Emily announced she was engaged to a man named Jason, 30M. I had met him a few times before the engagement, and honestly, I wasn't impressed. He seemed charming on the surface, but there was something about him that rubbed me the wrong way. He talked over people, made inappropriate jokes, and acted dismissively toward my parents and me. I brushed it off initially, thinking maybe I was just being judgmental. My parents, however, loved him and were thrilled about the engagement, so I tried to keep my opinions to myself. After the engagement, things escalated. Emily started planning her wedding in a very traditional, grand way, which is fine, but Jason started involving himself in ways that felt controlling. He would dictate the guest list, veto vendors he didn't like, and even comment on my wardrobe choices for pre-wedding events. It wasn't just that he had opinions. It felt like he was undermining Emily's family and friends. There were a few incidents that really stood out. At a bridal shower, he loudly criticized the choice of cake, saying it wasn't sophisticated enough. He kept making snide remarks about my contributions, as if they weren't good enough. During a family dinner, he corrected my sister in front of everyone over trivial details like table arrangements, making her visibly uncomfortable. He made passive-aggressive comments toward my parents about overstepping when they offered suggestions, even though Emily had asked for their input. Each of these incidents made me increasingly uncomfortable. I tried to discuss my concerns with Emily privately. I didn't want to alienate her, but I felt like Jason's behavior was toxic. Unfortunately, Emily didn't take it well. She got defensive, saying I was being judgmental and that he loved her and would never intentionally hurt anyone. She accused me of trying to sabotage her happiness, which hurt because my only goal was to protect her and my family from unnecessary conflict. As the wedding approached, I noticed more red flags. Jason would make dismissive comments about my job and my lifestyle, implying I was immature and irresponsible. At one point, he outright told me my opinions didn't matter because I wasn't close enough to Emily to understand her needs. This felt demeaning and made me anxious about being around him for hours during wedding events. I started thinking seriously about whether I wanted to be involved in any way. 2 weeks before the wedding, Emily asked me to help with seating arrangements. I explained that I wasn't comfortable participating in wedding planning anymore because of Jason's behavior. She was furious and said I was being dramatic and selfish. I tried to explain that my decision was about preserving my mental health and not about controlling her choices, but she wouldn't hear it. She started sending me texts accusing me of hating her fiancé and trying to ruin her wedding. My parents were caught in the middle, trying to mediate, but even they admitted they had noticed Jason's domineering tendencies. I finally made the decision to decline the wedding invitation. I wrote Emily a letter explaining my reasons carefully. I emphasized that I love her, I support her happiness, and I want her to have a beautiful wedding, but I cannot participate in an event where I feel disrespected and uncomfortable around her fiancé. I also offered to celebrate with her privately at another time, so she wouldn't feel completely abandoned. I posted this letter in a way that was very respectful, without blaming her for her choices, but firmly stating my boundaries. Her reaction was immediate and intense. She called me crying, yelling that I was betraying her and the family. She accused me of being selfish and ruining what should have been a joyful time. My parents were upset with me too, though they understood my reasoning on some level. Jason, naturally, claimed I was being dramatic and manipulative, and that I was trying to start drama for no reason. Other relatives started taking sides, and suddenly, I was painted as the villain in this family narrative. I've received mixed reactions from other friends and distant relatives. Some say I have every right to protect my mental health and avoid toxic people. Others say I'm overreacting and that I should have gone to the wedding for Emily's sake, even if it meant enduring Jason's behavior. My closest friends are supportive and say my feelings are valid, but I still feel guilty. This is my sister, after all, and weddings are supposed to be joyful, family-centered events. I don't want to lose her over this, but I also don't want to compromise my well-being or enable what I see as toxic behavior. Since then, communication with Emily has been strained. She hasn't spoken to me much, and when she does, it's usually about how hurt she is. I keep trying to reach out in a gentle way, but she either ignores me or lashes out. My parents are worried about a permanent rift, and honestly, so am I. I feel like I made the right choice for myself, but I also feel the emotional weight of potentially losing my sister's closeness. I wonder if I could have handled things differently, or if attending the wedding, despite my discomfort, would have been a better choice. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because I don't feel safe or respected around her fiancé. AITA for refusing to let my cousin live with me indefinitely even though she insists I owe her after she financially helped me through college. This is going to be long, but I want to give all the context so people understand why I feel conflicted. I, 35F, have a cousin, Hannah, 33F, who has been more like a sister to me growing up. Our families are very close, and we spent nearly every holiday and summer together. When I went to college, Hannah helped me in ways I'll never forget. She lent me money for tuition and books, gave me rides when I needed them, and even let me stay with her for a couple of weeks during summer breaks when I couldn't afford my dorm fees. I've always appreciated her support, and I've done my best to return the favor in small ways over the years. A few months ago, Hannah went through a messy breakup and ended up losing her apartment due to financial struggles. She called me in tears, saying she had nowhere to go and asking if she could move in with me temporarily while she figured things out. At the time, I was living with my partner, Luke, 36M, in a 2-bedroom apartment with limited space, working full-time, and trying to manage household responsibilities and my own life. I hesitated because adding another adult long-term would be stressful, but I ultimately agreed to a short-term stay. I made it clear that she needed to actively look for employment, find a new apartment, and contribute to household chores if she stayed. Hannah agreed. The first few weeks went okay. She stayed in the guest room, kept her area mostly tidy, and seemed motivated to find a new apartment and work. I helped her update her resume, applied to a few jobs with her, and sent her rental listings that I thought were realistic. However, after about a month, it became obvious that she wasn't taking things seriously. She began sleeping in late, spending most of her days on social media, watching TV, or playing games. She rarely applied for jobs and ignored rental leads I sent her. She started leaving dirty dishes in the sink for days, piles of laundry in common areas, and personal items scattered around the apartment. She began inviting friends over frequently without asking, sometimes bringing multiple people at once. I tried having serious conversations with her multiple times. I reminded Hannah that the arrangement was temporary and that living with me indefinitely was not an option. I explained that my household has routines, responsibilities, and a partner who needs privacy and space, and that continuing to live here without contributing or actively seeking independence would create tension and stress. Hannah became defensive, saying I was being selfish and ungrateful for all the help she gave me in the past. She insisted that I owe her and that refusing to let her stay long-term was cruel. She also implied that our relationship might be permanently damaged if I didn't allow her to stay. This has caused major tension in my apartment. Luke is frustrated because the apartment feels crowded and chaotic. Our daily routines, meals, and private time have all been disrupted. Even small tasks like cooking, cleaning, or relaxing have become complicated because she dominates common spaces without consideration. Our cat has also been stressed by the increased activity, which adds another layer of responsibility for Luke and me. I have tried multiple compromises. I offered to pay part of a rental deposit, suggested short-term sublets or Airbnb options, and even offered to extend her stay for a strictly defined period if she actively applied for jobs and apartments. She refused all alternatives, insisting that only living with me full-time was acceptable. She also involved other relatives, telling them I was being cruel and refusing to help family in need, which led to even more pressure. Some relatives called or texted me, suggesting I should let her stay because I owe her for past help and that family obligations should come first. I feel guilty because I want to help Hannah, but I also feel manipulated. Giving in would not help her. It would enable her to avoid responsibility and create resentment on both sides. I've supported her emotionally, financially in small ways, and practically over the years, but living together indefinitely under these circumstances is not support. It is a burden. I'm also concerned about precedent. Allowing her to stay indefinitely without contributing or showing effort could encourage her to rely on me for other aspects of her life, permanently altering our relationship and household. I've tried to communicate boundaries clearly, offered reasonable alternatives, and been supportive in ways that don't compromise my home, but nothing seems to satisfy her. So, AITA for refusing to let my cousin move in with me indefinitely, even though she insists I owe her for everything she did to help me in college. AITA for refusing to let my brother host his bachelor party at my house after he insulted my parenting. I, 38F, have 2 children, Max, 11M, and Lily, 8F, and I've been a single parent for 6 years. I'm very careful about who I allow into my home, particularly when it comes to parties or gatherings, because my children's routines, safety, and comfort are my top priority. My younger brother, Tom, 34M, recently got engaged and started planning his bachelor party. He asked if he could host it at my house, claiming it would be low-key and just a few friends. Initially, I was hesitant, but I wanted to support him, so I asked for details, number of guests, plans for drinking or activities, how long it would last, and whether my children would be present. I made it clear that the party needed to respect my household rules, my children's routines, and noise levels. Tom agreed and said it would be no problem, that he would follow all the rules, and that my kids wouldn't even notice. A week later, he came over to discuss plans in person. While we were talking, he made an offhand comment that caught me completely off guard. He said, "Honestly, Max and Lily are way too strict. You hover over them too much. No wonder they're so uptight. If they were at my parties, they'd actually have fun." My children were in the room at the time and overheard him. Max immediately asked what he meant, and Lily looked visibly upset and confused. I tried to explain calmly that everyone's household has different rules, and that doesn't make anyone wrong. Tom laughed and said I was overreacting, insisting he was just being honest. At that moment, I realized I couldn't feel comfortable hosting his party. It wasn't just a casual comment. It was a direct critique of my parenting in front of my children. I worried that if I let him have a party in my house, he or his friends might continue to undermine my authority or disrespect my household rules. I also didn't want my children to feel belittled in their own home. I called Tom the next day and told him I couldn't host a bachelor party. I explained that after our conversation, I no longer felt comfortable having a gathering in my home. I offered alternatives. He could rent a small hall, have it at a friend's house, or do a night out at a bar or restaurant. I emphasized that I still wanted to celebrate with him in other ways, but that the party could not take place at my house. Tom reacted angrily. He accused me of ruining his bachelor party and said I was being dramatic. He claimed I was overreacting to a harmless comment and that I was putting my pride above family. Some mutual friends started weighing in, saying I could have compromised by setting stricter rules or limiting the party to a few hours. But I felt that the comment he made and his attitude suggested he wouldn't fully respect boundaries. My parents got involved as well. They were disappointed and said I could have been more flexible and family should come first. I tried to explain that my decision wasn't about being inflexible. It was about protecting my children and maintaining a safe, respectful environment in my home. They acknowledged my points but continued to express disappointment, suggesting I was overreacting to a single comment. Since then, Tom has been distant and occasionally passive-aggressive in family messages. He posts about the unsupportive sister who won't let him celebrate, and some relatives have indirectly pressured me to relent. I've stayed firm, reiterating that my priority is my children's well-being and that I'm still willing to celebrate with them outside of my home. I've considered compromise, like letting the party happen in a backyard section away from the children or limiting hours strictly, but past experiences with parties and guests suggest that such arrangements would likely lead to tension, mess, and potential conflict. I also worry that any compromise would signal that disrespect toward my parenting is acceptable. I feel guilty because I love my brother and want him to enjoy his celebration, but I also know I cannot allow my home and children to be subjected to criticism and potential chaos. I feel like I've offered multiple ways to support him, help planning elsewhere, celebrating together in other settings, without compromising my boundaries, but he sees my refusal as a personal slight. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother host his bachelor party at my house after he insulted my parenting in front of my children. I want to support him and maintain a positive relationship, but I cannot compromise my household rules, my children's comfort, or my role as a parent. This situation has caused tension with Tom, my parents, and some extended family, who think I should have been more accommodating. I'm struggling with guilt versus principle, wanting to honor my family, but also uphold my boundaries. I need an outside perspective on whether my decision makes me unreasonable or if standing firm is justified to protect my children and my home. AITA for refusing to let my brother stay with me after he lost his apartment. I, 31F, have a younger brother, Tom, 27M, who I've always been close to, though our personalities are very different. I'm organized, independent, and value stability, while Tom has always been more impulsive and emotionally driven. Growing up, I often felt like I had to take care of him in small ways, and while I love him, I also know he sometimes struggles to take responsibility for his own actions. Recently, Tom called me in a panic. He had just been evicted from his apartment due to missed rent payments and said he had nowhere to go. He asked if he could stay with me just for a few days while he figured out his next steps. I felt torn because I care about him and wanted to help, but I also know from experience that his few days often turns into weeks or even months. My apartment is small, and I work from home several days a week, so my space is both my sanctuary and my workspace. I told him I couldn't let him move in. I explained that my apartment is small, that I rely on a predictable routine to maintain my mental health, and that having him live here, even temporarily, could create tension and disrupt my life. I also offered other forms of support, helping him find a short-term rental, contributing to a hostel or Airbnb, assisting with apartment searches, or even helping him connect with friends who could host him temporarily. I try to be compassionate but firm. Tom did not take it well. He accused me of being selfish and said I didn't care about him. He argued that I was the only family member who could really help him and that refusing would make things worse. I reminded him that refusing to let him stay doesn't mean I'm abandoning him. It just means I want to support him in ways that don't jeopardize my own stability. He said I was overreacting and that a few days wouldn't hurt anyone. Over the next few days, Tom started contacting me constantly, sending long texts and calling repeatedly. He described his situation in detail, sometimes trying to guilt me into changing my mind. I felt stressed and anxious every time my phone rang, and it started affecting my work and sleep. I tried to stay polite and reiterate the alternatives I was offering, but it didn't seem to help. I considered compromise. I thought about letting him stay one night or letting him come over just to shower and eat, but I realized that even short-term arrangements could quickly become extended. I also worried about the emotional consequences. Tom is highly emotional when he's stressed, and having him in my space could lead to arguments, passive-aggressive behavior, or resentment that could damage our relationship permanently. Some friends and family have told me I'm justified in setting boundaries and that protecting my mental health and living space is important. Others have suggested I should make an exception for a family member in crisis. The mixed advice has made me feel guilty. I want to help Tom, but I also know that compromising my home and routines could create more problems than it solves. Tom's persistence has caused tension with other family members too. They've called and asked why I won't help him, implying that I'm being unreasonable. I've explained that I'm helping him in ways that don't involve letting him live with me, but they still seem dissatisfied. I've helped him search for temporary housing, offered to cover costs for a short-term stay, and helped him connect with friends who might host him for a night, but nothing seems to satisfy him. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother stay with me after he lost his apartment? I want to support him and be there for him, but I also need to protect my home, my routines, and my mental health. I've offered compromises, alternative solutions, and practical help, but he and some family members see my refusal as selfish or uncaring. I feel trapped between wanting to help and needing to maintain my own stability, and every day I feel stressed, anxious, and guilty. I've tried to explain that my refusal is about boundaries and not about love, but he continues to insist I'm being selfish. I feel like no matter what I do, I'll either let him down or compromise my own life, and I don't know which makes me the asshole. I want to support him responsibly without turning my home into a source of stress, but it feels impossible to strike the right balance. I'm exhausted, anxious, and unsure if I'm in the wrong for standing firm. AITA for refusing to let my sister live with me after she destroyed my career. AITA for refusing to let my older sister, Emily, move in with me after she completely destroyed my professional reputation, even though my parents are insisting I forgive and forget because family is family. This is long, but I really need an outside perspective. I, 28F, live in a mid-sized city and have been working in a competitive marketing firm for about 5 years. I have always been ambitious and proud of my work. My older sister, Emily, 32F, has always been a bit of a free spirit, very impulsive, and prone to making questionable decisions. Growing up, our relationship was complicated. We loved each other, but she could be controlling and manipulative at times. She's always relied on my parents for support when things go wrong, and they have generally indulged her behavior. About a year ago, Emily moved to my city after a rough breakup and a string of unstable jobs. I reluctantly agreed to let her stay with me for a few weeks while she got back on her feet. At first, everything seemed fine. She was grateful and helped out around the apartment. But then things started to unravel in ways I didn't expect. Emily got a temp job in my company. I warned her that workplace dynamics were delicate and that she should keep a low profile, especially since I've been building my reputation for years. She insisted she could handle it. Within a month, she started undermining my projects and taking credit for work I had done. At first, I thought it might be accidental or just office competition, but then she deliberately leaked sensitive client information during a presentation. One of the clients complained, and my manager called me in. Because of the way Emily had presented the information, it looked like I had mishandled the account. My manager was furious, and my firm gave me a formal warning. I tried to explain, but the emails and documents clearly showed her involvement, though they didn't explicitly blame me. Still, in the eyes of the company, it reflected poorly on me. I confronted Emily immediately. She laughed it off, saying, "You always take things too seriously. Relax. It's just work." I told her she had jeopardized my career, and she shrugged and said, "Well, maybe you need to toughen up." I asked her to leave my apartment immediately, and she did, but she went to our parents and told them that I was heartless and ruining her life by not letting her stay. My parents, predictably, sided with her to an extent. They called me and said I needed to forgive her, that she had nowhere else to go, and that families should always be able to lean on each other. I tried to explain that she had caused real professional damage and that having her live with me again would be a huge risk, but they said I was being cold and selfish. After she left, My career started to recover slowly. I worked hard to rebuild my reputation, and luckily, most clients understood that I was not responsible for the mishap. However, my trust in others, especially family, was shaken. My parents continued to guilt-trip me subtly, hinting that my relationship with Emily would deteriorate if I didn't make amends. They also suggested I offer her financial support or at least a temporary place to stay, but I refused. A month ago, Emily contacted me again, asking if she could move back in because she had been evicted. She claimed she had learned her lesson and promised she would behave this time. I told her no. I reiterated that I could not risk her interfering in my life or career again. She became angry and started posting on social media about how cruel I was being. My parents then called me, frustrated that I was refusing family. They implied that I was being unreasonable and selfish, and that I should do the right thing by helping my sister. I haven't spoken to Emily directly since then, but she occasionally tags me in posts or sends mutual friends messages about how I'm heartless. I feel conflicted, because I know family is important, but at the same time, she deliberately sabotaged my career, and I don't see any reason why I should risk my livelihood for someone who has proven to be reckless and manipulative. My friends are divided. Some say I'm right to protect myself, while others think I should forgive and let go because she's family. I personally think forgiveness doesn't mean letting someone live in your apartment after they've betrayed you so severely. AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me after she destroyed my career, even though my parents are pressuring me to forgive and forget. AITA for refusing to let my sister live with me indefinitely, even though she claims I owe her after she supported me financially and emotionally during college. This is going to be long, but I want to give all the context so people understand why I feel conflicted. I, 34F, have a younger sister, Olivia, 30F, and our relationship has always been complicated. Growing up, she was extremely close to our parents, very praised for her achievements, and often relied on me in subtle ways without ever acknowledging it. Despite this, we were close, and I always tried to help her when she needed it. During college, Olivia helped me out financially when I was struggling to cover tuition and living expenses. She lent me money for books, helped me move, and even let me stay with her for a couple of weeks during summer breaks when I couldn't afford my dorm. I was very grateful for her support, and I always made sure to express my appreciation. A few months ago, Olivia went through a difficult breakup and ended up losing her apartment due to unpaid rent. She called me, panicked, and asked if she could move in temporarily while she got back on her feet. At the time, I was living with my partner, Mark, 36M, in a two-bedroom apartment with limited space, and I was working full-time while balancing household responsibilities. I hesitated because I knew having her move in long-term would be stressful, but I ultimately agreed to a short-term stay. I told her clearly that she needed to actively look for a job, secure a new apartment, and contribute to household chores if she stayed. Olivia agreed. At first, things went smoothly. She stayed in the guest room, kept her space mostly tidy, and seemed motivated to find a job and a new place to live. I helped her update her resume, applied for jobs with her, and even sent her rental listings that I thought were suitable. However, after a few weeks, it became obvious that she wasn't making any effort. She started sleeping in late, spending most of her days on social media or watching TV, and hardly applied for jobs or responded to rental inquiries. She began leaving dirty dishes in the sink, piles of laundry around the apartment, and personal belongings scattered in common areas. She also invited friends over frequently without asking, sometimes bringing multiple people at a time. I tried talking to her seriously several times. I reminded Olivia that the stay was temporary and that living with me indefinitely was not an option. I explained that my household has routines, responsibilities, and a partner who needs privacy and space. I told her that continuing to live here without contributing or actively seeking independence would create tension and stress for everyone. Olivia became defensive, claiming that I was being selfish and ungrateful for all the help she gave me in the past. She insisted that I owe her, and that refusing to let her stay long-term was cruel. She also implied that our relationship could be permanently damaged if I didn't allow her to stay. This situation has caused significant tension in my household. Mark is frustrated because the apartment feels crowded and chaotic. Our daily routines, meals, and private time have all been disrupted. Even small tasks like cooking, cleaning, or relaxing have become difficult because Olivia dominates common spaces without consideration. Our cat has also been stressed by the increased activity, which adds another layer of responsibility for Mark and me. I have tried multiple compromises. I offered to help her with a rental deposit, suggested short-term sublets or Airbnb options, and even offered to extend her stay for a strictly defined period if she actively applied for jobs and apartments. She refused all alternatives, insisting that only living here full-time was acceptable. She also involved other relatives, telling them I was being cruel and refusing to help family in need, which led to even more pressure. Some relatives called or texted me, suggesting I should let her stay because I owe her for past help and that family obligations should come first. I feel torn because I do care about Olivia and want to support her, but I also feel manipulated. Giving in would not help her. It would allow her to avoid responsibility and create resentment on both sides. I've supported her emotionally, financially in small ways, and practically over the years, but living together indefinitely under these circumstances is not support. It is a burden. I'm also concerned about precedent. Allowing her to stay indefinitely without contributing or showing effort could encourage her to rely on me for other aspects of her life, permanently altering our relationship and household dynamics. I've tried maintaining clear boundaries, offered practical alternatives, and communicated respectfully, but nothing seems to satisfy her. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me indefinitely, even though she insists I owe her for everything she did to help me during college. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to help my sister plan her wedding because she repeatedly criticized my lifestyle. I, 36F, have a sister, Emily, 33F, who recently got engaged and started planning her wedding. Emily is very detail-oriented and ambitious, and she has always liked to take charge, which is fine, but she also has a tendency to criticize others, including me. Over the years, she has commented negatively on my choices, my career, how I spend my money, my home, and even how I raise my child. I've generally tried to let it slide, but has left me feeling undervalued and judged. When she got engaged, Emily immediately asked for my help with wedding planning. She wanted me to assist with choosing the venue, picking invitations, coordinating vendors, and attending numerous meetings and tastings. I initially agreed, hoping to support her and spend time together. I thought I could help without compromising my own schedule or sanity. Within days, Emily began criticizing me directly. She told me my house was too small to store decoration samples, implied my taste in design was cheap, and made several remarks about my child being too loud during planning visits. She also commented on my job, saying I should have more free time, and implied that my other responsibilities were preventing me from being fully committed to her wedding. I reminded her politely that I have work, family, and personal obligations, and that I was helping within my capacity, but she didn't seem to care. A few weeks later, she asked me to host a bridal shower at my home. I explained that my space wouldn't comfortably accommodate her guest list, and that trying to host such an event would create stress for me and my child. Emily became upset and told me I was selfish and unsupportive. She said that helping with her wedding was a way to show that I cared about our relationship, and that my refusal was hurtful. I reiterated that I was happy to help in other ways, like assisting with budget planning, attending vendor meetings, or giving feedback on invitations, but she dismissed these alternatives as not enough. Things escalated further when Emily suggested I should manage the RSVP list and seating arrangements. I explained that this is a huge responsibility and that I had neither the time nor the organizational capacity to handle it. She said I was lazy and making everything harder for her when all I was trying to do was set boundaries. I offered to help in smaller, manageable ways like proofreading the invitations or making recommendations for vendors, but she continued to push for me to take on more. During this period, Emily also made comments about my lifestyle. She said my job was unambitious, my living situation was mediocre, and my parenting choices were inflexible and boring. These remarks were particularly hurtful because she was asking me to support her celebration while simultaneously undermining me personally. I tried to stay neutral and focused on practical help, but she interpreted my discomfort as unwillingness to help. At this point, I realized that participating fully in planning her wedding would likely involve constant criticism, stress, and emotional strain. I told her that I could no longer assist with the wedding beyond minimal guidance and support. I made it clear that I would still celebrate with her, attend the ceremony, and help in small, manageable ways, but I would not take on major responsibilities. Emily reacted extremely negatively. She accused me of being self-centered, a terrible sister, and said I was choosing to distance myself instead of being part of her big day. She sent messages to other family members, framing me as someone who didn't care about her happiness, and some relatives have started subtly pressuring me to step in and do more. Some mutual friends have offered their opinions. A few say I should just help for the sake of family harmony, while others agree that I have every right to set boundaries, and that being repeatedly criticized is not a reasonable expectation. I feel frustrated because I'm trying to help in ways that are sustainable and healthy for me, yet it's being interpreted as laziness or selfishness. I have considered compromise, like handling only specific tasks that I feel comfortable with, but even suggesting this is met with resistance. Emily wants complete involvement from me, and any limits are seen as rejection. I want to maintain my relationship with her, but I cannot allow her wedding planning to become a source of ongoing stress or undermine my confidence in parenting. So, AITA for refusing to help my sister plan her wedding after she repeatedly criticized my lifestyle and made me feel undervalued. Even though she expects full involvement and others think I should just step up, I want to support her and celebrate her marriage, but I also need to protect my boundaries and my emotional well-being. This situation has caused tension with Emily, family members, and mutual friends. I feel torn between wanting to maintain a positive relationship and needing to preserve my sense of self and personal limits. I'm trying to find ways to contribute meaningfully without compromising my own life, but she interprets any limits as personal rejection. I hope there is a way to balance celebrating her wedding and maintaining my boundaries, but right now, it feels like any refusal to overextend myself is seen as a failure in our relationship. AITA for refusing to let my best friend move in after she lost her apartment. I, 34F, have been living alone in my apartment for about 6 years. It's a one-bedroom space that I've made comfortable and functional for both living and working from home. I'm a planner by nature, and I rely heavily on routines to keep my mental health stable. I also value quiet and privacy, and I've always kept my home as a sanctuary from the stress of work and life. My best friend, Claire, 33F, has been part of my life since college. We grew very close over the years, sharing jobs, relationships, and family milestones. Claire has always been more spontaneous and sometimes struggles to maintain long-term stability in her life. She's had periods of financial difficulty, frequently moved apartments, and occasionally made impulsive decisions that have caused problems with work or housing. Despite this, I've always been supportive emotionally and try to help her navigate tough situations. A week ago, Claire called me in tears. She had just been evicted from her apartment because she fell behind on rent. She said she had nowhere else to go and asked if she could stay with me just for a little while until she figured things out. She promised to follow all my rules, stay out of my way, and respect my space. My first reaction was concern for her well-being, but I immediately felt apprehensive because I know from past experience that just a little while can often extend into weeks or months with Claire. I told her I couldn't have her move in. I explained that my apartment is small, that I work from home several days a week, and that having her live here, even temporarily, could disrupt my work and mental health. I also offered alternatives, helping her find a short-term rental or Airbnb, contacting friends who might host her for a night or two, helping her search for a new apartment, or even covering a few nights in a hostel. I try to make it clear that my refusal wasn't because I didn't care about her, but because I needed to maintain my home as a stable environment. Claire did not take it well. She accused me of being selfish and said I was putting my comfort above our friendship. She said that friends are supposed to help each other in times of crisis and implied that I was abandoning her. I reiterated that I was happy to help in other ways, but she insisted that none of those solutions were adequate. She kept emphasizing that she had nowhere else to go and that I was her only trusted friend. Over the next few days, Claire began contacting me constantly. She sent long texts detailing her situation, sometimes several times a day, and called late at night. The constant messages started to affect my mental health. I felt stressed, anxious, and guilty every time my phone rang. I tried to respond politely and reminded her of the alternatives I could help with, but she kept insisting that moving in was the only option. I considered compromise. I thought about letting her stay for a single night or allowing her to store some belongings temporarily while she found another place. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that even a short-term arrangement could quickly extend, especially given her history of overstaying temporary accommodations. I also worried about the emotional consequences. Claire can be highly emotional when stressed, and having her in my apartment could easily lead to arguments, tension, or resentment that could damage our friendship permanently. Some friends have said I'm justified in protecting my space and mental health, pointing out that boundaries are essential even with close friends. Others argue I should make an exception for a friend in crisis, emphasizing loyalty and compassion over convenience. I understand both sides, but I also know from past experiences that compromising my home for someone else has led to months of stress, resentment, and disrupted routines. Claire's persistence has started affecting my life outside of our friendship. I worry about how mutual friends perceive me, and the guilt is taking a toll on my work and daily functioning. I've helped her research temporary housing, offered to pay for a few nights at short-term rental, and helped her look for new apartments, but she continues to insist that my refusal is cruel. So, AITA for refusing to let my best friend move in after she lost her apartment? I want to support her without compromising my home, mental health, and routines. I've offered compromises and alternative forms of support, but she interprets my refusal as cold and uncaring. Every day, I feel anxious, guilty, and trapped between wanting to help and needing to protect my stability. I want to maintain our friendship, but I also want to preserve my home as a safe and functional space. I've tried to make it clear that my refusal is about boundaries and not about love or loyalty, but she continues to insist I'm selfish. I feel like no matter what I do, I will either disappoint her or compromise my own well-being. I want to be supportive in a responsible way without turning my home into a source of stress and conflict, but it feels impossible to strike the right balance. I don't know if standing firm makes me the asshole, and I'm exhausted from the stress and guilt of this situation. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after discovering a huge secret about my fiancé. I, 28F, have always been close with my younger sister, Emily, 25F. Growing up, we were inseparable, sharing clothes, secrets, and even our first heartbreaks. As adults, we've maintained a tight bond, and I was thrilled when she got engaged to her boyfriend, Mark, 27M, whom I'd known since high school. I also met my fiancé, Ryan, 30M, about 2 years ago through a mutual friend, and things moved quickly. We've been living together for about a year and had plans to get married in the next couple of years. Recently, Emily called me to discuss some wedding drama. She told me that Mark's family is insisting on a big traditional ceremony, while she wanted something smaller. I offered to help with planning and managing family expectations. It was during these conversations that Emily accidentally mentioned something that made my stomach drop. She said that Mark had a brother who looked remarkably like Ryan. At first, I laughed it off, thinking it was a coincidence. But Emily said that her mother-in-law had been joking about how Ryan and Mark's brother could pass as twins. That comment, combined with certain strange similarities I had noticed in family stories, made me uneasy. Curiosity got the better of me. I started doing a little digging, try to reassure myself that I was overreacting. I didn't want to accuse Ryan of anything without proof. I asked Ryan about his family background casually, and his answers seemed consistent at first. But when I asked about his cousin James, who he had briefly mentioned once, the story fell off. He hesitated, then said James wasn't really that close. I pressed further, and that's when he got defensive. Eventually, I discovered through some indirect sources, old social media posts, a few scattered public records, that Ryan and Mark's family were more connected than he had ever admitted. In fact, it looked like Ryan and Mark's brother were actually half-brothers. At first, I couldn't believe it. I confronted Ryan, and after a long, tense conversation, he admitted it. He told me that he had met his biological father very late in life and had only recently discovered the truth himself. He hadn't known how to tell me and was afraid I'd judge him or leave him. He insisted that he had nothing to do with hiding it and that he had no contact with Mark's family because the situation was messy and he wanted to respect boundaries. I was stunned. I didn't know how to process this. The thought of being at my sister's wedding with my fiancé, potentially being the half-brother of the groom, made me feel sick. It's not just the shock, it's the awkwardness, the questions from family, and the moral discomfort. I tried to talk to Emily about it, but she got angry. She said I was overreacting, that Ryan had no role in this, and that I was making a huge deal out of something that wasn't my fault. She also said I was embarrassing her because the wedding had already been planned and the families had started interacting. I told her I couldn't attend. I explained my reasoning as calmly as possible. I wasn't saying Ryan or Mark were at fault, but I personally couldn't handle being in that environment. I offered to help in other ways, sending gifts, helping with planning, and attending the rehearsal dinner virtually, but I couldn't physically be there. Emily was furious. She accused me of being selfish, ruining her special day, and putting her in an impossible position. She also brought up that my absence would upset my parents, who were looking forward to seeing both of their daughters at such an important family event. Since then, I've been getting messages from family members. Some are supportive, understanding my discomfort. Others think I'm overreacting, saying I should put aside personal feelings for family milestones, and that it's not like anything inappropriate is happening. Ryan has been very supportive, telling me he understands and doesn't want me to feel pressured, but I still feel guilty and torn. I don't want to create drama or hurt Emily, but I also can't bring myself to attend knowing the underlying family connection. I keep wondering if I am overreacting, if I should just suck it up for the sake of my sister and the family. My friends are split. Some say I'm justified in setting boundaries. Others think I should put family first. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after learning about Ryan's unexpected connection to Mark's family? Could I be handling this better? Or is my reaction reasonable given the circumstances? AITA for refusing to let my brother live with me indefinitely, even though he insists I owe him after I inherited my parents' house? This is going to be long, but I want to explain everything so people can understand why I feel conflicted. I, 36F, recently inherited my parents' house after they passed away unexpectedly within a few months of each other. The house is modest, but has been in our family for decades, and I was the only child still living nearby. My younger brother, Jake, 30M, has struggled financially for years. He has bounced between short-term jobs, often misses rent payments, and has never managed to save or maintain stable housing. Despite this, we were close growing up, and I've always wanted to support him without enabling him. A few weeks after the funeral, Jake called me, saying he had nowhere to go because he had been evicted from his apartment. He asked if he could stay at my house temporarily while he figured things out. At the time, I was grieving, overwhelmed, and unsure of how to handle everything, so I agreed to a few weeks. I told him clearly that this was temporary and that he needed to actively look for a new apartment and job. He agreed. The first week was manageable. Jake stayed in the guest room, kept his space reasonably clean, and seemed motivated to look for work. I even helped him update his resume and apply to a few jobs. But after 2 weeks, it became clear he wasn't taking it seriously. He spent most of his days playing video games or scrolling on his phone, missed scheduled interviews without telling me, and left dishes and laundry piling up. He also started inviting friends over without asking, sometimes staying late into the night. I tried talking to him calmly. I reminded Jake that the agreement was temporary and that he needed to find a place soon. I explained that living with me indefinitely was not an option and that I had responsibilities, bills, and routines to maintain. Jake reacted angrily, insisting that I was being selfish and not supporting family. He claimed that because I inherited the house, I owed him shelter indefinitely and that refusing was a betrayal of family loyalty. This has caused tension in my household. I live with my partner, Sam, 37M, who is supportive but stressed by the situation. Our schedules, routines, and privacy have all been disrupted. Jake leaves his things everywhere, uses the kitchen and living room without regard for our schedules, and sometimes borrows the car without asking. Even minor things like cooking meals or having quiet time have become a challenge because of his presence. I've tried multiple compromises. I offer to help him with rental deposits, find a short-term sublet, and even extend his stay by one more week if he actively applied to jobs and apartments. He initially agreed, but did nothing. Every time I bring up a timeline or expectations, he frames it as me abandoning him and says I'm treating family like tenants. He repeatedly references the help he gave me emotionally over the years and insists I must repay him by letting him stay. Jake has also involved other relatives, claiming I'm being heartless and refusing to help family. Some relatives have called to pressure me, saying I should prioritize family over my own household needs. I tried to explain that support doesn't mean enabling someone to avoid responsibility, but they dismiss it and insist I should just give him time. I feel torn because I do care about Jake and want to support him, but I also feel manipulated. Giving him would not help him. It would enable him to continue avoiding responsibility and could create long-term resentment. I've provided emotional support, guidance, and some financial help in the past, but living together indefinitely under these circumstances is unsustainable. I'm also worried about precedent. Allowing him to stay indefinitely without contributing could encourage him to rely on me for basic needs in the future, potentially affecting my relationship with Sam and creating ongoing tension. I've tried to communicate clearly, offered practical alternatives, and maintained boundaries, but Jake refuses to take responsibility. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother live with me indefinitely, even though he insists I owe him after I inherited my parents' house. AITA for refusing to let my sister move in with me after a breakup. I, 35F, live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment that I've spent years making comfortable, organized, and a place where I can recharge. I work from home 3 days a week, so my apartment doubles as both my living space and workspace. I rely heavily on routines and quiet to maintain my mental health, and I'm very protective of my personal space. My sister, Jenna, 30F, recently went through a messy breakup. She had been living with her boyfriend for the past 3 years, and after they split, she had nowhere to go because she didn't have a lease in her own name and didn't have any friends willing to host her long-term. Jenna called me and asked if she could move in just for a little while she figured out her next steps. She promised it would only be temporary, that she'd follow all my rules, and that she wouldn't interfere with my work or routines. I immediately felt apprehensive. While I love my sister and want to support her, I know from past experience that temporary stays with family can often turn into months of disruption. My apartment is small, and having someone live here full-time, even temporarily, would affect both my workspace and my mental health. I told Jenna I couldn't have her move in, but I offered alternatives, helping her find a short-term rental or Airbnb, assisting with job applications or apartment searches, or even contributing to a hotel or hostel for a few nights. I try to frame it as support in ways that didn't involve her living with me. Jenna did not take it well. She accused me of being selfish and uncaring, saying that family is supposed to help each other in times of crisis. She argued that I was the only family member she could rely on, that other friends and relatives were too busy, and that letting her stay would solve everything. I tried to explain that my refusal didn't mean I didn't care, but that I needed to maintain my home and routines to function. I also reminded her that I was willing to help in other ways, but she insisted that none of those options were enough. Over the next several days, Jenna started calling and texting me constantly, sometimes multiple times a day. She described her situation in detail and kept emphasizing her lack of options. She framed my refusal as a personal betrayal and began telling mutual friends that I wouldn't help her, which made me feel guilty. I responded politely, reiterating the alternatives I could provide, but it didn't seem to satisfy her. I considered compromise. I thought about letting her stay a single night or allowing her to leave some belongings temporarily while she looked for another place, but I realized even short-term arrangements could quickly extend. Jenna has a history of extending temporary stays and becoming dependent on others when stressed. I also worried about the emotional consequences. She's highly emotional and reactive during crises, and having her in my apartment could lead to arguments, tension, or resentment, potentially damaging our relationship permanently. Friends and some family members have told me I'm justified in setting boundaries and protecting my mental health. Others argue I should make an exception because she's family and in crisis. I understand both perspectives, but I know from experience that compromising my space for someone else's crisis often leads to long-term stress and conflict. Jenna's persistence has started affecting my daily life. I feel anxious and guilty whenever my phone rings or when she sends messages asking if I've changed my mind. The stress has made it hard to focus on work and has affected my sleep. I've helped her research temporary housing, offered to pay for a few nights in a short-term rental, and assisted with apartment searches, but she continues to insist that my refusal is cold or selfish. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister move in after a breakup. I want to support her and be there for her, but I also need to protect my home, routines, and mental health. I've offered alternative solutions, compromise, and practical help, but she interprets my refusal as rejection. Every day, I feel stressed, anxious, and guilty, and I worry that standing firm could permanently damage our relationship, even though I believe I'm doing the responsible thing for both of us. I want to be compassionate without sacrificing my life. I made it clear that my refusal is about boundaries and not love or loyalty, but she continues to insist I'm being selfish. I feel like no matter what I do, I'll either disappoint her or compromise my own well-being, and I don't know which makes me the asshole. I want to support her responsibly without turning my home into a source of stress and conflict, but it feels impossible to strike the right balance. I'm exhausted, anxious, and unsure if I'm in the wrong for standing firm. AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay with me after she moved to my city, even though she says I'm being selfish. I, 37F, have a cousin, Mia, 34F, who recently relocated to my city for a new job. We've always been close growing up, celebrating birthdays, holidays, and family milestones together. She reached out as soon as she arrived, saying that she didn't have an apartment yet, and asked if she could stay with me temporarily while she looked for a place. I live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment with my husband and our 9-year-old son, Alex, and I immediately felt uncomfortable at the idea of having someone live with us, even temporarily. I explained that while I was happy to help in other ways, my home wasn't set up for guests long-term. I suggested she look for a short-term rental, a sublet, or an extended-stay hotel for a few weeks while she searched for an apartment. I also offered to help her research apartments, provide rides to viewings, and assist with moving logistics once she found a place. Mia replied that none of those options felt like a real solution. It implied that staying with me would be easier, cheaper, and more comfortable. I tried to explain that my hesitation wasn't personal. My apartment is small, my husband and I have a structured routine with Alex, and I value having a stable, quiet home environment. We also have a dog who isn't used to other people staying over for long periods. I mentioned that even a few weeks of someone living in our home could cause tension and disrupt our family life. Mia dismissed these concerns, saying that I was overreacting and that family should be willing to make accommodations in times of need. Over the next few days, Mia's messages became increasingly persistent. She kept emphasizing that she trusted me, that she didn't want to be alone in a new city, and that my refusal was cold and unhelpful. She implied that if I were a real family member, I would make space for her no matter the inconvenience. I reiterated my willingness to assist in practical ways that didn't involve her living in my apartment, but she continued to push. Things escalated when she began bringing up past favors. She reminded me of times she had supported me emotionally during difficult moments, claiming that I owed her this support in return. I acknowledged her help in the past, but pointed out that I had never agreed to let her live with me indefinitely or disrupt my family's routine. I also reminded her that offering emotional support is different from giving someone unrestricted access to my home, particularly when it could affect my child's stability and my household dynamics. I spoke to my husband about the situation, and we agreed that having Mia move in would create stress, potential conflicts, and logistical complications. We also worried about setting a precedent that family could impose themselves into our home at will. He supported me in offering alternative help, like rides, apartment research, and financial guidance for temporary housing, but he agreed that hosting her was not a viable option. Despite all of this, Mia has continued to insist that I am being selfish. She told mutual friends and some extended family members that I refused to help her in her time of need, and that I was abandoning her. Several family members reached out privately, suggesting I should compromise or find a way to let her stay just for a little while to preserve family harmony. I explained my reasoning, emphasizing the disruption to my household, my child's routine, and the practical limits of my living space. Some understood, but others implied that I was being overly rigid and unkind. I have considered possible compromises, like allowing her to stay for 1 or 2 nights while continuing her apartment search or setting strict boundaries for shared spaces. However, given her persistence and past experiences with family guests overstaying their welcome, I am concerned these compromises would quickly be ignored, leading to tension and stress. I also worry that any concession now would establish the expectation that she can dictate terms whenever she needs something, which could create long-term problems for my household. I feel guilty because I love Mia and want her to feel supported in a new city, but I also have a responsibility to protect my home, my husband's comfort, and Alex's stability. I am trying to find ways to help her without compromising our family life, but she interprets any limit as a personal slight. I've offered guidance, practical assistance, and emotional support, yet she seems unwilling to accept anything that doesn't include living with us. So, AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay with me after she moved to my city, even though she feels abandoned and family members think I should compromise. I want to maintain our relationship and help her adjust to her new life, but I cannot allow my household, child, and routines to be disrupted. This situation has caused tension between Mia, me, my husband, and other family members. I'm trying to offer help in responsible ways, but she sees any refusal as a moral failing. I want to preserve our relationship without sacrificing my family's well-being, but I'm struggling to navigate this in a way that satisfies everyone. I hope there's a way to support her emotionally and practically without compromising my household, but standing firm feels like the only safe and sustainable option right now. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's destination wedding after a huge family fallout. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's destination wedding after what happened at Thanksgiving last year. This has been weighing heavily on me, and I'm still questioning whether I'm being unreasonable, but I need to get it off my chest. I, 28F, have a sister, Emily, 31F, who has always been the golden child of our family. Our parents have always treated her differently, but I never let it bother me too much because I thought our sibling bond was strong enough to withstand it. For context, I live in a different state from my family due to work, while Emily stayed closer to home. I usually visit for holidays, birthdays, and occasional weekends, but things got tense last year. During Thanksgiving, Emily and I got into a huge argument. The fight started over something minor. Emily wanted to borrow some of my savings advice because she had recently started investing. I told her I could give her some tips, but that I wasn't comfortable sharing specific numbers or details about my accounts. She didn't take it well and accused me of never supporting her like I support myself, which quickly escalated into a heated argument. The conversation devolved into old grievances. She brought up every small slight from our childhood, like when I apparently took more attention from our parents or when I didn't back her up in high school drama. I tried to calmly explain that I never meant to hurt her and that some of these things were minor misunderstandings, but she wouldn't hear it. Things got loud, our parents got involved, and it ended with Emily storming out and me leaving soon after. Our parents have been tight-lipped about the incident, mostly just saying, "She's your sister, work it out," but Emily hasn't reached out since. Fast forward 6 months, Emily got engaged. She and her fiancé decided on a destination wedding in Hawaii. They sent out invitations last month, and my parents encouraged me to go, saying that family comes first and that you can't let a fight ruin this special moment. I told them I was hesitant given that Emily and I hadn't talked since Thanksgiving. They said I should at least try to make peace and attend the wedding. I reached out to Emily with a message congratulating her and asking if she would like to talk before the wedding. I expected maybe a short response, but what I got instead was a long text detailing all the ways she felt I had wronged her over the years, including things I genuinely had no memory of. She ended her message by saying she didn't want me at her wedding if I couldn't apologize properly and show up with a present and a speech acknowledging my wrongs. I was shocked. I thought the issue could be worked out privately, but she's insisting on some sort of public performance of reconciliation. I replied that I wasn't comfortable attending under those conditions, and I also felt that she was holding grudges over things that were decades old. I told her that I loved her and wanted to rebuild our relationship, but I needed it to be genuine and not staged for an audience. She hasn't replied since, and my parents are now frustrated with me. They say that refusing to attend makes me the bad one, and accuse me of letting pride get in the way of family unity. I feel torn. On one hand, I love my sister and want to mend things. On the other, the thought of attending a wedding where I am essentially being forced to perform a scripted apology is stressful and feels unfair. I'm also concerned about the precedent it sets. If I apologize publicly now, it might make me feel obligated to appease her in the future whenever there's a disagreement. I've considered just going for a few days, staying mostly out of the spotlight, but I fear it would still create tension and maybe even ruin her wedding experience if emotions run high. A few friends have told me I might be overthinking and that it's just a wedding. Go, smile, and enjoy yourself. Others have said that my feelings are valid and that being forced to perform a reconciliation isn't genuine and might damage my relationship with Emily further in the long run. My therapist suggested setting boundaries is completely reasonable, especially if previous attempts at communication were dismissed or ignored. The problem is that my parents are still pressuring me. They talk about family appearances, how cousins and aunts will be disappointed, and how you might regret this forever if I don't go. I get it, but I also feel like being present under duress could backfire and lead to more resentment, both from me and Emily. I've tried explaining this, but it feels like they only see it as being stubborn rather than a legitimate concern about mental and emotional well-being. Adding another layer, my sister's fiancé seems unaware of the entire conflict. I have the option to reach out and clarify my position, but I'm hesitant. I don't want to bring more tension into what is supposed to be a happy time for him, but I also don't want to look like the villain if he assumes I'm simply being petty. My parents suggested I write a heartfelt letter or call her, but I feel like anything I say will be scrutinized and turned into a performance rather than an honest conversation. I'm also worried about the long-term impact on our relationship. If I don't go, will this wedge grow into permanent estrangement? If I do go and comply with her demands, will I be resenting her in silence for years? I feel stuck between maintaining my boundaries and preserving family ties, and it's exhausting. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's destination wedding after she demanded a public apology for past grievances, when I feel that attending under those conditions would be unfair and emotionally manipulative. I genuinely want a relationship with her, but I feel like this is not the right way to rebuild it, and I don't want to sacrifice my mental health or dignity for the sake of appearances. I keep second-guessing myself because everyone around me, my parents, cousins, and friends, seem divided. I want to do what's right, but I also want to be respected as an individual and not forced into a situation that feels wrong. Has anyone else been in a situation where a sibling demanded a public apology or scripted reconciliation? How did you handle it without causing a family rift? And is it possible to attend events like weddings under these strange circumstances without making things worse? I feel like I'm standing at a crossroads, and any perspective would really help. AITA for refusing to let my cousin move in with me indefinitely, even though she claims I owe her after she helped me get through college. This is going to be long, but I want to provide all the context so people understand why I feel conflicted. I, 34F, have a cousin, Megan, 32F, who has been like a sister to me since childhood. Our families are close. We spend almost every holiday together, and we've always leaned on each other. When I went to college, Megan helped me in ways I could never forget. She lent me money for tuition and books, gave me rides when I needed them, and even let me stay with her for a couple of weeks during summer breaks when I couldn't afford my dorm. I've always appreciated her support and have tried to repay her in small ways over the years. But she makes it very clear that she thinks I owe her more than I ever have. A few months ago, Megan went through a rough breakup and ended up losing her apartment due to financial issues. She called me in tears, saying she had nowhere to go, and asked if she could move in temporarily until she got back on her feet. At the time, I was living with my partner, Jake, 35M, in a modest two-bedroom apartment, working full-time and balancing household responsibilities and personal life. I hesitated because adding another adult long-term would be stressful, but I agreed to a short-term stay, making it clear she needed to actively find a job and an apartment while contributing to household chores. Megan agreed. The first couple of weeks were manageable. She stayed in the guest room, kept her space relatively tidy, and seemed motivated to apply for jobs and apartments. I helped her update her resume and applied for positions with her, even showing her rental listings and helping her fill out applications. But after about a month, it became obvious that she wasn't taking any steps toward independence. She began sleeping in late, spending most of her days on social media or watching TV, and rarely applied to jobs or responded to rental leads. She also started leaving dirty dishes in the sink, piles of laundry in common areas, and personal belongings scattered around the apartment. She began inviting friends over without asking, sometimes multiple people at a time, which disrupted our household. I tried multiple serious conversations with her. I reminded Megan that the arrangement was temporary and that living with me indefinitely was not an option. I explained that my household has routines, responsibilities, and a partner who needs privacy and space. I told her that continuing to live here without contributing or actively seeking independence would create stress and tension for everyone. Megan became defensive, claiming I was being selfish and ungrateful for all the help she gave me in the past. She insisted that I owe her and that refusing to let her stay long-term was cruel. She also implied that our relationship could be permanently damaged if I didn't allow her to stay. The situation has created significant tension in my apartment. Jake is frustrated because our routines, meals, and private time have all been disrupted. Even small tasks like cooking, cleaning, or relaxing have become complicated because Megan dominates common areas without consideration. Our cat has also been stressed by the increased activity, which adds another layer of responsibility for both of us. I have tried multiple compromises. I offered to help with a rental deposit, suggested short-term sublets or Airbnb options, and even offered to extend her stay for a strictly defined period if she actively applied for jobs and apartments. She refused all alternatives, insisting that only living with me full-time would work. She also involved other relatives, telling them I was being cruel and refusing to help family in need, which led to even more pressure. Some relatives called or texted me, suggesting I should let her stay because I owe her for past help and that family obligations should come first. I feel torn because I do care about Megan and want to support her, but I also feel manipulated. Giving in would not help her. It would allow her to avoid responsibility and likely create resentment on both sides. I've supported her emotionally, financially in small ways, and practically over the years, but living together indefinitely under these circumstances is not support. It is a burden. I'm also worried about precedent. Allowing her to stay indefinitely without contributing or showing effort could encourage her to rely on me for other aspects of her life, permanently altering our relationship and household dynamics. I've tried maintaining clear boundaries, offered practical alternatives, and communicated respectfully, but nothing seems to satisfy her. So, AITA for refusing to let my cousin move in with me indefinitely, even though she insists I owe her for everything she did to help me during college. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.